And the webinar is live. I see the attendee numbers going up, which is always a good sign. No matter how many of these webinars I do, I'm always concerned that Zoom has changed its strategy on me and that I've messed something up crucially. So good to know that I see folks joining us. Welcome to another Civically Speaking with the A.R.T. We are so happy to have you all here this evening, afternoon. It's sort of a funky time. Happy to have you here in general, regardless of the time of day it is for you. I am Sarah Schofield-Manser. I am the A.R.T's Assistant Director of Special Events and Partnerships. I use the she/her series of pronouns, and I'm a white woman with dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail, wearing sort of a blue and green striped shirt and headphones. Again, thank you so much for joining us today for another fantastic Civically Speaking. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous land that Oberon and the Loeb Drama Center occupy, and that is Indigenous and unceded territory of the Massachusetts people. And I encourage everyone at home to investigate the Indigenous land from which you're calling, and I'll drop a resource in the chat for that in just a minute. A few quick housekeeping things before I bring our host on camera. In terms of the overall format of the event, we've got about an hour of discussion and exciting presentation for you, and we've reserved 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you have a question for any of our panelists and discussants, please submit it using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen at any point throughout the hour. Again, it's different from the chat feature. And so to ensure that our panelists see your question, please submit using the Q&A feature. And you can direct message me using the chat if you have any questions about that process. So without further ado, because we've got a packed hour, I would love to invite Tarek Masoud, our fantastic host for the evening, to turn on his camera. Hi, Tarek.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you with your professional setup over there?
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. The professional setup is designed to cover for all kinds of other lack of professionalism that.
Well, it's very impressive to me, and I appreciate it. So
thank you.
We've got a kind of packed schedule, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll pop off camera to run the back end in just a minute.
Thanks, Sarah. Take care. So welcome, everybody, to Flap My Wings, 10 years since Tahrir Square. As Sarah said, I'm Tarek Masoud. I'm a professor at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and it's really my great honor to be one of your hosts this evening. Tonight's event is a commemoration of one event and a celebration of another. The event we're commemorating is, of course, the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, which happened 10 years ago today. On that day, January 25th, 2011, Egyptians began a series of popular protests in which day after day for 18 days, they pitted their bodies and raised their voices against the abuses of an authoritarian regime that had long dominated them. And they succeeded in bringing down that regime against all of the odds. That incredible demonstration of courage and commitment and creativity inspired and continues to inspire people all over the world, including people whose only knowledge of Egypt is that it's the country that has the pyramids. And that brings me to the second event, which is the celebratory portion of this evening, because two of the non-Egyptians who were inspired by what the Egyptian people pulled off 10 years ago were two brothers from Boylston, Massachusetts, Patrick and Daniel Lazour, who saw a photograph of the revolutionaries of Tahrir and decided to put their prodigious musical and storytelling gifts to the purpose of telling the tale of these people. To do that, they teamed up with the award-winning director, Taibi Magar, and the magical result was the musical We Live in Cairo, which premiered at the American Repertory Theater in 2018, and which remains one of the most stunning artistic representations, not just of the Egyptian revolution, but really of any revolution. Now, ever since that show ended its triumphant run, fans of its music and of its storytelling have been begging the brothers to make the songs from that show available to the world. And today they have answered that call. Their new album, Flap My Wings, songs from We Live in Cairo, is not a cast album, although that is going to come, but rather a collaboration with artists from the region, including three of the region's most legendary musician activists, Egypt's Ramy Essam, Lebanon's Hamid Sinno, and Tunisia's Emel, each of whom on this album offers their unique interpretation of the songs from the musical. The result is a collaborative, transnational, and dare I say, transformational commemoration of the Egyptian Revolution. And for the next hour, we're going to meet some of the incredible artists behind this work, listen to some of the tracks of the album, and reflect on what happened in Egypt 10 years ago today. And now I'd actually like to introduce the creative forces behind the album. First, the Lazur Brothers. Hopefully they're turning on their video now. Daniel and Patrick Lazour. Now, every time I introduce these gentlemen, I make a note that I need to talk to their parents, because those people, their parents, pulled off the rare feat of raising two geniuses and the even rarer feat of raising two brothers who not only get along, but get along well enough to work together. And what work they've done together. It's really incredible. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, Tarek, thank you.
You'll see tonight the fruits of their collaboration, and you'll understand why they've been recognized with some of the musical theater world's most distinguished awards and residencies. And when they're not bringing the Egyptian Revolution to the stage, they're busy writing their next musical about cancer and its treatment through the ages, and performing their songs at the Boiler Room in New York City. Really thrilled, guys. Now I should introduce their partner in crime, or should I say their partner in virtue, and that's Taibi Magar, an Obie award-winning director, and more importantly, the American-born daughter of an Egyptian father and American mother. There she is. Taibi is one of the most in-demand directors on the continent, and it's a measure of her commitment to her ancestral homeland and to the genius of the Lazur Brothers that, among the many things she could have been doing, she chose to direct We Live in Cairo. Now, I will say I had the good fortune to have a front row seat to the partnership between Taibi and the Lazur Brothers, and I can say that rarely have I seen three people who are so intellectually and creatively in sync with each other, and I hope you'll get a flavor of their remarkable co-authorship today. Taibi, how are you?
I'm doing great. An honor to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
All right. Our final co-host for this evening did not write or direct We Live in Cairo and did not sing on this album, but I think he's as much a creative force behind it as anybody in this world. And that is the superstar, supernova Egyptian graphic artist, Ganzeer, who should turn on his camera now. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for the big words.
Ganzeer, some Egyptians puff up their chests when they note that Liverpool's Mo Salah is their countryman. I do that when I talk about you. Ganzeer has exhibited his work everywhere that matters. He's been profiled and written about by everyone that matters, and he produces work that matters. His art is really part of the visual landscape of the Egyptian Revolution, and his fingerprints and inspiration are on every inch of We Live in Cairo, including the poster art for the stage production, the cover art for the album we're celebrating tonight, and the music video that we're going to watch at the end of this evening, which is the main single from the album. He's also the inspiration for one of the musical's most fascinating and important characters. So Ganzeer, it's a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Before we dive into this evening's program, I wanted to just briefly, start the conversation that I hope will run like a thread throughout our hour together. Because like I said, we're commemorating one event, the Egyptian Revolution, and we're celebrating another, which is this album. And I know that when we were putting this event together, we struggled a little bit with its dual nature. We don't really celebrate the Egyptian Revolution because it obviously didn't result in the freedom that Egyptians had hoped for. And instead, it was, I would say, snuffed out at considerable human cost. And yet we do want to celebrate your artistic representation of that revolution. And I guess this is a question for all of you. What's it like to celebrate an artistic achievement whose subject matter is distressing, or at the very least, not the ordinary stuff of celebration? Daniel and Patrick, maybe you want to...
Yeah, well, I'd say, had we made this album in the first couple years of our writing of the show, it would have been much easier to celebrate, obviously, given what, what the revolution was to do was not totally known yet, but also we didn't have many friends yet. We didn't make many friends through the what turned out to be the 7-year process of writing the show. So now, 7 years on, where I'm so close with Ganzeer and you, Tarek, and so many other Egyptians who are there, who this time in history is so meaningful to. It's difficult for us to sort of see it with the remove that maybe we had at the beginning. So that's sort of how I feel. Maybe.
Yeah, I would also say, I think it is a difficult and very complicated thing to both, celebrate the artistry of so many great artists, so many great musicians that you're going to meet tonight, and also honor the revolution, which is, so difficult for so many people to bring back in their memory. But I think one of the major manifestos of this album was to make it a collaboration and a conversation with the Arab world. And I think that is sort of our small way of both celebrating artistry, because I believe that artistry must be celebrated and must be pushed constantly and relentlessly, but also honoring the memory of people who have given their life and their life force to a movement all throughout the Arab world: Tunisia, Lebanon, and Egypt.
Ganzeer and Taibi.
Well, it's definitely been, it's a complicated day full of mixed emotions, but grateful to be here and in conversation with the people who helped make it happen, and the activists who continue to make it happen, and the musicians who keep the conversation going. Democracy is never done.
The way I see it is, a lot of the work that I was compelled to do in the streets of Cairo was not for a one and done thing, and the way I see it, participating in doing the work with the Lazours for their album and for the play and so on is also just it's the continuation of the struggle, really, and we don't have to wait. It's an interesting phenomenon that, when Mubarak was unseated, then there was like a rush of journalists and filmmakers and all these people who came to Egypt and wanted to do something about this successful revolution, right? And then now, once that Sisi was to power, everyone just went back into their caves, and they're not. So it's an interesting phenomenon for some artists to only want to do something for what is already kind of a guaranteed success story or something, especially if you talk about theater and Broadway plays that tend to be about historical events, right? And in this case, we're really it is artwork that is, at the end of the day, still very much a part of the revolution, and it is this type of art that allows it to live on and continue, as far as I'm concerned.
I love that because absolutely, the Lazur Brothers started making a musical about the successful bit of the Egyptian revolution, and then they got sucked in and they've stuck with Egypt. And that's really a tremendous thing. Okay, so here's how the rest of our evening will work, everybody. We're going to meet 3 of the Arab artists who helped the Lazur Brothers realize their new album. First, Tunisia's Emel, then we'll have Lebanon's Hamid Sinno, and then Egypt's Ramy Essam. And we'll hear a little bit of what they created. We'll then view the world premiere of the great Ganzeer's music video for the main single off of the album, Flap My Wings. And then we'll have time for you, dear audience, to put your questions to the Lazur Brothers, Taibi, and Ganzeer. And we'll conclude at about 6:15. Now, if you're like me and you can't get enough of We Live in Cairo, you're actually invited to stay on after the conclusion of the conversation for a bonus event, which will be a listen through of the album with the Lazur Brothers and Madeline Smith, who is the music supervisor for the album. And with that, let me now turn over the proceedings to the Lazur Brothers, who will introduce their first collaborator, the Tunisian artist Emel.
Yes, this is a thrill for us to be introducing Emel, because we have been following Emel's career and have been super fans since probably our first year in the city, which was 2013, 2014, going to her free concerts at Lincoln Center and all of these things. So it's a dream come true that Emel is actually contributing to this album, and I can't overstate that enough. Just a little background on Emel. Emel Mathlouthi is an internationally renowned activist and singer-songwriter whose music is both heartbreaking and life-affirming. In 2011, she was deemed the voice of the Tunisian Revolution, which was really the spark of the Egyptian Revolution and the revolutions across the Arab world. After her song "Commemorate" caught fire with activists and protesters across her country, as well as across really every country in the Arab world and the world. She's recently released a new album, which is available on Spotify and iTunes, called The Tunis Diaries, which is a confessional sort of outpouring of pride and memory. And we are so privileged to say that Emel has contributed to Flap My Wings, Songs from We Live in Cairo, with a breathtaking interpretation of the show's final song. For those who saw the show, the final song used to be called just Finale, creatively Finale, but now now it is on the album called Living Here, which is sort of a cri de coeur in sort of a, well, we'll let Emel talk about it. So we'll listen a bit to that at the end of the conversation. But for now, Emel, we'd like to welcome you and express how grateful we are for being here, especially given that you are in Paris and it's, midnight or so? Oh, I think you're muted, Emel.
It's 11:17. This is the most I partied, so since all the various confinements here, so I'm very excited. It's late.
Right. She could serve you something. Yeah.
Well, you're serving me euphoria with this very, very, very nice presentation and flattering. Thank you so much. I was really touched.
Thank you, Emel. I mean, it's no exaggeration to say that your work inspired directly the song that you're singing. I remember the few weeks leading up to writing Living Here, talking with Patrick, getting obsessed with Commemorate, being like, we need to include something with this spirit in the show. It has, just as Patrick said really beautifully, I think, this heartbreaking quality, but also life-affirming quality. And so I remember Patrick was working for this Broadway PR firm, and I think you had to go to the Tony Awards, which is like the big award show for Broadway. Right. And you had jotted down some lyrics, and I found them, and I set them a little bit and sent them to Patrick, and we were both like, this is... could you? First of all, we're like, this is exactly what it needs to be for the show. And then, could you imagine if Emel even heard this? Not even speaking to performing this. So we're truly, truly touched and moved that you came on board with us.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, when I saw you the first time performing, it was really a very. I was like, really, I traveled, and it doesn't happen too often to find music that's so true, that's so from the heart, and that travels within you and makes you travel. And the songwriting is just so beautiful. And just I felt in love immediately with you guys. And then I was like even more touched that you guys had such an appreciation for my work. So, it's one of those moments when it really feels nice to feel like you have a family, an artistic family. And I'm very grateful for that, because not everybody is generous that way. And I try to also understand, like, why are you talking about Egypt, and why are you like, I try to like process that in my brain, and that even like made me love you even more, because that's what it's about. That, something that happens in Egypt, something that happens in Tunisia, then, like reverberates across the region, and then what happens across the region reverberates, I don't know, all over the world, and inspires young artists to write music and to create beauty that, also reverberates, back to, and that's the magic of music. Because as you were saying earlier, even though, things can be a little bit dark, but at the same time, we have to celebrate creativity, we have to celebrate music, we have to celebrate art, we have to celebrate generous people and generous souls like you. And I'm very, very grateful to have been invited to sing that song, because it's one of the most beautiful songs I've heard. Like, really. And I was really scared for a long time. I really didn't want to, touch it, because I wasn't sure how it was going to, serve it. And somehow I feel like he was talking to me, and I love the poetry. I love everything in it. And I think it's one of the most beautiful experiences I've had, because I don't do this very often. I'm always scared of singing somebody else's lyrics and somebody else's songs, or it's such a responsibility. And I'm always like worried to not be as truthful as it should be. And I feel like this song, I could listen to it. It's not because I sing it, but it's just a beautiful song, and I'm so grateful to have been able to sing it.
Emel, thank you for all of that. I don't think we know exactly what to say, and we're really touched. We were really moved also reading your Washington Post op-ed most recently that I know Sarah might be able to link to in the chat. And we were wondering if quickly you could sort of talk about Tunisia and how, unlike Egypt, it was able to cement for a time a path toward democracy. And how do you feel 10 years after about your own country and about your country's relationship with democracy and its fight for social justice?
Well, it's such a complicated topic, right? Because, there's so many different points of views. And also, like, I definitely feel less legitimate because I don't live in Tunisia full time. I only just pass by. But I think I can still defend the position because I care a lot. And I recently had the opportunity to travel to Egypt many times and perform there. And I have this like big love for that country and for all the people I meet there, for every time I've been there, for every experience I had there. I just love the audience. There's so much love in that country. There's so much creativity. There's so much, people are brilliant, people are smart. And at the same time, I really realized that it's actually kind of getting worse than before the revolution. And when I compare Tunisia, yes, I feel like we're in a better spot, at least, freedom of expression wise, where like the press is really free. I could say whatever I want now, even though the system still remains corrupt, where like from, the culture scene to, arts to, the highest levels. And it's true that also like torture still exists. So it's not like, it's not black or white. And I don't think it should be this way still. We should celebrate in some ways that Tunisia is kind of like being a success, but at the same time, it's not exactly success. So I don't think it's like all the people living in the Arab region, like we feel like we have to accept certain things in order to get certain things. I think we deserve living in democracy. We deserve to live in freedom. We deserve to decide for ourselves. We deserve to be recognized for our ideas and to build our own countries. But unfortunately, it's mainly corruption, and we're just, we feel that like our revolutions are being stolen. But at the same time, I'm seeing like a lot of images of uprising right now in Tunisia, and it's all young people who are really young, like who were like 10 and 12 and 13 when the first revolution happened. So it gives me a lot of hope. And someone wrote me a message at the university. I'm actually very touched that people still go back to Tahrir and really like have that appreciation. But really, like I don't feel, compared to people who were tortured, who were jailed, and who were, terrible things happened to them, I don't feel like, I contribute to much. But at least, like when I receive messages like this young man who's now like about 20, and like that message, and people like me give him hope and give him make him whatever, like what was created back then, give him like push him and encourage him to believe in himself. So I think there's a lot of things that I want to pay tribute to, but I can't be like naive or like super excited and hopeful at the same time, because I know that there's a lot of anger right now in Tunisia. But I also think it's very wrong to be nostalgic to the past.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I just have to say too, just what you're talking about in terms of generations. The generations of these kids who were 12 when the revolution in 2011, 2010, 2011 happened. Now they're becoming revolutionaries. They're becoming activists, and just this unique kind of generational activism that happens, I think. And I feel like there are so many examples of it in Egypt as well, and it's such a powerful thing for a country to have that, I think. And I think it's just, to me, it was noteworthy what you were saying. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Emel, we know it's late in Paris, and we'd love to show show a little bit of the song that you interpreted via slideshow, and ask all to listen to a little bit of this gorgeous stylings by Emel.
I know the rhythm of conversation here between two people, between my people. was full, but now it's not. I will rise and dress. I will rise and dress.
So overcome. It's just overcome.
Oh my God.
Emel, we want to thank you so much for being here and offering your thoughts and your music. And we want to encourage everyone to stream Tunis Diaries, to also read the incredible op-ed that Emel wrote for the Washington Post about 10 years since the Arab Spring. It's a really moving and incredible read. And we can't thank you enough for coming aboard this project and for your mind and your heart and your soul.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for making the world a more beautiful place, literally. And all of you. I was so happy to party a little bit. And yeah, it's nice to be together, you know, in moments like this. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Emel. Have a wonderful night.
You too. And good luck with this very, very beautiful record.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Up next, we have Hamid Sinno, who I have the honor of introducing. Hamid Sinno is the Lebanese-American lead singer of the rock band Mashrou Leila, which he co-founded in 2008 while studying graphic design at the American University of Beirut. With their distinct approach to storytelling and orchestration, Mashrou Leila fuses the craftiness of a music workshop with the punch of stadium rock. They have crafted some of the most melancholic ballads and raucous anthems in contemporary alternative Arabic music, and went on to perform them in live sold-out venues worldwide and at international festivals. The band has released 4 studio albums. I recommend all of them. You can find them on all the various streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. Hamid, why don't you pop on with us? I gotta say this, Hamid, this is an incredibly emotional introduction because Hamid has been a profound influence on the musical. For us artistically, we heavily listened to Mashrou Leila. They very much were inside of our process, but we had never met Hamid. We sort of thought we never would meet Hamid. He's sort of like Mick Jagger to us. So this is, incredible. And also, so not just his sound, but we're also incredibly inspired by Hamid's queer rights activism in the region. And that also had a profound effect on the storytelling inside of We Live in Cairo. So as soon as we knew we were making the album, we knew we needed this singular voice. And to me, one of the most incredible vocalists alive, Hamid had to be on it. And so he sings the first song in the album. And I gotta say, I've said it to you over email, Hamid, and to the Lazours almost daily, but I can't get enough of the song. I listen to it constantly. I thought I knew the song. I listened to it 1,000 million times, but somehow your interpretation helped me understand it on an even deeper level. So thank you, Hamid, for being here.
I'm like so emotional right now. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, like this is such an honor.
So glad you're here. So I definitely want to talk about your relationship to Lebanon and revolution. But first, I thought maybe it might be useful to just talk about your own relationship to Egypt. I know you have played concerts there, and your relationship to the country and to the revolution.
All right. So my relationship to Egypt is actually very long and very complicated. If I'm being honest, I grew up in Beirut, but I had a fairly insular upbringing. I was very much in an elite school bubble, and because of that, sort of separated from the culture around me. My first language is English, not Arabic. Although I grew up there, I come from a household that predominantly spoke English. And then college happened, and I noticed that was essentially some weird class value that I absorbed just because I got to go to these schools for free. And so I started doing a lot of work on trying to understand the region. And so what I did was travel to Egypt before anything started happening with the band. I tried to intern with graphic designers who were like sort of figureheads in pan-Arab graphic design in the 60s and 70s, and tried to just learn as much as I could about Egypt and, you know, sort of pop culture history in the region. And so like that internship was actually a few months before the revolution. And I remember very distinctly coming back from Cairo, having lived there for a few months, for like 2 or 3 months, coming back and posting something on Facebook saying, well, I guess there's not going to be a revolution. And I still have that like really bad artwork on some hard drive somewhere. And then the revolution happens, and, you know, it changed the entire world. And just getting to play there for a very long time, you know, Egypt was one of those weird sort of exceptional parts in my career where we got to play there for a few years before getting banned. And that was our largest, you know, for lack of a less cynical term, that was our largest fan base, our market. And so when we were banned and when we were no longer allowed to even visit, let alone play there, that pretty much, you know, solidified the band's like downhill sort of spiral.
Wow. Yeah. Well, where are you today in terms of thinking about the nature of revolution on the other side of this hill?
Well, I mean, I'm physically in Philadelphia on occupied Lenape land, which is to say I guess I got exhausted and left. And I thought it would be healthy to take a break from Beirut for a while. And then as soon as I left Beirut, basically like slammed the door behind me, right? We had a concert canceled there. There were arrest warrants out for us in our own country. So I immediately sort of started telling myself that this is my home now, right? Which, I mean, if I'm being honest, is part of why this particular project has been so emotional and so important for me. Is, you know, I think I got the first email from you folks towards the very end of September, and a couple, you know, in a matter of days, there was that giant explosion in Beirut, and it was a year. A few days later was a year after the Lebanese 2019 revolution. And so it's just a very emotional time. It wasn't a few days before the explosion, it was like a month after. And so the song, you know, working on this has been sort of a way to try to reconnect, I guess, pre-cynical feelings that I had about being there and hoping for more for myself and everyone around me.
Yeah, I find myself turning to this song often. I mean, this past summer in America, obviously we're going through a lot of protests about the murder of George Floyd, and it was a roller coaster nearly every day about what is the function of art and what is our role in culture and in society and in transformation. And I feel like I get lost and hopeless, and then I honestly listen to Genealogy and feel the surge again. Maybe this is a good time to play it and share it with our audience. Sarah, would you mind?
They feed me lies, if not in scraps of truth. They fill me up with shit. I feel shame, they fill themselves, they fill me up again. This time on state TV, they said he ate hashish. That makes no sense, they say it anyways. They say it anyways. There are many ways to tell the truth. Just tell them that the youth aren't afraid. That's why you die, and drugs are wrong. That is not done, that is haram. They feed themselves, they like infections most. They let their bellies out when they're full. They feed themselves, they drive in chauffeured cars. They shut down rotaries, and if you know the man in charge, you pass by, you pass by, you pass by, you pass by. You have rights, you pass by. You're my
Sorry, out there.
you pass by. I can see them, I can see deep.
That was the wrong song, correct? Okay. So
Sorry, friends.
we're now going to hear the right song.
Sorry, friends. My computer is really struggling back here. I'm going to try to set that up. It froze as soon as I hit play. So I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties. Give me about 30 seconds.
Ganzeer and Hamid, have you all met? You haven't met before, but you're clearly in conversation with each other, yeah?
Actually, I don't think we've ever met, but Hamid definitely is brought up a lot among like mutual friends. And I actually, an interesting thing, Hamid, this is like a side story, but the first time I ever listened to Mashrou Leila, I was in Amsterdam for an art residency in 2010. And we were a group of Egyptian and Lebanese artists together on this residency. And so you were introduced to the Egyptian crew by the Lebanese friends, you know. And two things that come to mind is that one, our reaction as Egyptians were like, what is this? What is this sound? You know, we were like so taken by the sound of Mashrou Leila. It was like so creative and so different. And we were telling like our Lebanese artist friends, like, why are the Lebanese so much better than the Egyptians? Like really pushing the boundaries of, and then they were like, what? What are you talking about? The Egyptian independent artists are back. So that was like an interesting anecdote. And the other thing was, it was around that time that like we started to see like the videos surfacing in Egypt about just like protests and even not even protests, just people who would like upload a video, just complain to like as a selfie to a camera or something. And my friends at the time were already of the mind that, you know, something's going to go down in Egypt soon. And so somehow the sound of Mashrou Leila, the first time listening to it, to the comments my friends were making, all that stuff kind of blended together in my mind.
You should know I had that exact same experience with your design work. And this is really like no bullshit, sorry. But I remember, I don't know if you know Ahmed Isabi, but he's a graphic designer and he showed me your work. And this was back then. And literally the first thing I said was, why is Egypt so much better than us? And it was the first thing that like came out of my mouth was just how incredible your work was. Even like way back then, let alone now, like the hard work for this album is incredible.
Ryan, when you're ready.
I was one person who had an idea, who made it words, and someone heard. I was one person who had an idea, who made it words, and someone heard. Someone heard and took my words. Someone heard and took my words and made them theirs. We stepped outside and had a smoke. I felt a kinship as we spoke of thoughts we shared. He told his brothers, I told mine, and what was 2 turned into 9. We sat to eat. I love my angry family. A thorn outside the factory was when we'd meet. I was one person who had an idea, who made it
on poster board and stood outside the iron door on tired feet, blocking the street. The workers came 100 strong. We learned a chant, we sang a song. When I am free, we all will be. Soldiers with their loaded guns pulled up and shot us one by one. My brothers died, and so did I. I died and then I traveled on. I saw the riots and Helwan. I knew the cry. I knew the cry. I was one person who had an idea, who made it words, and someone heard. And then I reached a city enrolled in university. My words of rage were on a page. I logged onto the internet. I wrote my words and they were met with roaring sound and shaking ground. I held a cell phone in my veil. I told my sister we could fail. Come anyway. Go to the square. You'll know the words when you were there. And know that millions come from thousands. Know that thousands come from hundreds. Know that hundreds come from two, which comes from one person who had an idea, who made it away, and someone heard.
It's so unbelievable. And I just want, like, the song is really about this eternal struggle, and the show and protest is really about how it's almost never ending, and you have to keep carrying on. And I really think the arts in this song is, I think, revelatory for this, because I really feel like the arts and culture and artists, we are the ones who carry the energy forward when it's dark, and it's the gathering, it's the ritual, it's the reaching forward out of the dark place, and I just feel like this song captures it. It's really beautiful, Hamid.
I mean, it's a really beautifully written song. Honestly, this was I can't thank you enough for writing this, let alone like asking me to work on it. It's very
truly our pleasure. I mean, I think it's also worth noting that all of those voices that you hear on that are Hamid. So, and it's arranged, and Hamid arranged it as well. So I had some friends reaching out like, oh, who else is singing on that track? I'm like, no, that's Hamid running the gamut in terms of the sound spectrum.
It's so good for repeat listens, because you can start to pick up on these incredibly genius, tiny harmonies that Hamid made. It's really inspiring. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, really.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. More soon, we hope.
Yeah,
be well. Thank you.
Okay, so Emel's voice came to us from Tunisia. Hamid's wonderful voice came to us from Lebanon. And now we're going to go back to Egypt. If you, I think, needed any evidence that the Lazur Brothers were two mildly Lebanese American kids from Boylston, Massachusetts, if you had any doubt that these folks could produce art about the Egyptian Revolution that was authentic and, as the kids say, legit, then the fact that they got the famed and fierce Egyptian musician and human rights activist Ramy Essam to collaborate them should be enough. Ramy Essam is one of the gifts of the Egyptian Revolution to the world, and his role in energizing and entertaining and giving voice to the crowds in Tahrir Square during those 18 days of protests is actually the inspiration behind one of We Live in Cairo's main characters. Now, Ramy couldn't be with us today, but he recorded a couple of short videos. And if I could ask him a question right now, I'd ask him, look, what did you think when these two American guys came to you and said they were making a musical about your revolution? And in this video that we're about to play now, which is about 1 minute long, he kind of answers that question. So Sarah, maybe you can cue that up.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Lazours. I believe you're here in the room with me. Working with Lazours was much fun, was easy, and was very productive. And one of the things that fascinates me the most about them is how crazy attached they are to Egypt and to the Egyptian revolution, even when they were not there when the things happened. And I never felt that since day one I met them. It's just amazing. And I've been really learning from them of how much you don't have to be born in a certain place or be there when things happening to be attached. This shouldn't be a wall between us and any movement or any good cause. So thanks, Lazours. Thanks everyone in the room. Enjoy your day.
So that's quite an endorsement, guys. Tell us how you got Ramy interested in the show, and did you have to overcome any skepticism, or was he on board from the beginning?
Well, Ganzeer was absolutely our advocate, and had we not had Ganzeer as our advocate, this would not have come about. So we can't thank Ganzeer enough for that. We were invited to perform at the 9th anniversary to open up for Ramy at National Sawdust in Williamsburg. So, we met him and we all sort of hung out together, and, he's just as down to earth as he comes across in that video. And I remember actually, us meeting him a few years back too. And, this is before the show had any sort of, development proceedings or anything. And we mentioned, we're writing the show about the Egyptian revolution. And I was a little skittish to do so because, he's such a figure. And he said, oh, that's great. You should feel free to use any of my music that you want to use, which was sort of mind blowing. Just to think you didn't, first of all, we were American, as you're saying. Second of all, he didn't know what we were doing, but just his generosity of spirit to offer up his work like that. And his, I think it, it's the reason why he came aboard, and it really taught us, I think, the spirit of the show. Yeah, the spirit of right.
Yeah, clearly he also saw something really true in what you guys had produced. Now, we're going to listen to Ramy sing one of the tracks of the album, Tahrir Is Now. But before we do that, we actually wanted to share some of Ramy's thoughts on the Egyptian revolution and where it's been and where it's going. And so maybe we could get Sarah to cue that up, and then we'll play Ramy's rendition of Tahrir Is Now.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank Harvard University and American Repertory Theater for organizing this event for the 10th anniversary of the Egyptian Revolution. It means a lot. I want to thank you too for having me today. I wish I'm with you in the room, but I wish also that soon, hopefully, we can all meet again face to face. I want to talk about the 10th anniversary. I wish that today was the day when we would celebrate the people's victory, but that's not the case, sadly. And I know that many people think that we lost, that the revolution lost. Many people even call it a failure. And I don't agree with that. We were reborn in the revolution. The revolution taught us what real freedom means. The revolution planted seeds in each one of us. And these seeds are growing. And nothing can stop that. But we're also aware of the toughness in Egypt at the moment. Everything is much harder. Things are much worse than before the revolution. People sacrificed in all levels since 2011 till today, especially in 2011, 12, and 13, and 14. So what we're going through, what the revolution is going through at the moment, is a recession period that happened to all revolutions in history. And it's very important to remember that. This will give us hope. And let's remember that we were so naive in the beginning of the revolution when we thought that we can take down a military system with 60 years history of corruption in just a matter of 1 year. And that's impossible. And we learned that. And I think that now the duty that we should start to learn and educate ourselves on politics and human rights and how to be more organized. So when the next chance comes, we are prepared. And the next chance will come to continue what we started. Let's remember that we have a very powerful tool, which is art. There are tons of political revolutionary art that was created in the spring and the revolutions. This art is going to be always the guiding hand to us all. I want to remember today, after 10 years, that the past 10 years were just the start for a long journey towards freedom.
Wow, that was great. And, Taibi, he kind of echoed what you said about art really being the vessel of revolution and the crucible that keeps it alive during the dark times. So I think we should dive right into his rendition of Tahrir is Now, if Sarah can cue that up.
I'm a son of Tahrir, born into hope, into heat, into thousands of voices. I'm a son of Tahrir, out in the crowd, on the street, our pain, our pride, our choices. We've been chanting Horeya, Horeya. We'll be singing for days. Whoa, and our country scream, and my country is screaming. Tahrir is now, and now is here. We'll wait an hour, a day, a month, a year. We have cracked the wall of fear, and we'll see it crumble.
الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. مش هنمشي، هو يمشي. أناشيدنا بترن بالليل والنهار من القلب لحد الفجر الجديد. شعرتنا بتضم كل مصري وأمي شهيد. هنجيب لك حقك يما يما الدنيا. حرية 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 حرية.
She screamed, and my country is screaming. Tahrir is now, and now is here. We'll wait an hour, a day, a month, a year. We have cracked the wall of fear, and we'll see it crumble.
Wow, that was amazing. It just perfect compliment to your vocals. And when he said, "Hangib lak haqqak yamma," which is, we're going to, bring justice for you, mom. It's sort of like a call to the mothers of the martyrs in the revolution. It's just, that gave me chills. That was awesome. That's really great.
Yeah, when we got that, it was like, yeah, there's no words. There are truly no words.
That's incredible. Okay, so I think we should come to the special treat in an evening of special treats, and that is the world premiere of Ganzeer's music video for the song Flap My Wings. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the musical or who don't remember it in all its detail, Flap My Wings is the song that takes us inside the heads of the musical's protagonists. And it describes this process of cognitive liberation that takes these people from being generally privileged, callow young people to full-fledged revolutionaries willing to rise up and pay costs to rise up against a regime that's built on lies and venality. It's a really stunning song. And as you'll see in a minute, Ganzeer gives it a stunning visual treatment. So I guess, quickly before we play the song for the Lazours, I guess my question is, how did you capture the feelings of the revolutionaries in that developmental process so precisely in this song? What were kind of the raw materials of it? And then I guess for Ganzeer, I'd love to hear about your inspiration for the video. I mean, I just watched it earlier today and it's really incredible, but sort of the repertoire of images that you decided to draw on, sort of how did you come to those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the raw materials, I remember vividly Taibi pointing to a moment in the show that needed this point of activation that you're talking about, Tarek, for the characters, and how it just seemed, it just seemed absent from drafts prior. So I remember, we tried a few things and we were like, Taibi, it's just not coming. I don't know really what you mean. And then she wrote this incredible sort of poetic email that had a lot of the spirit of the song in it. And then we sort of did a deep dive into really what the spark of the thing was for so many people, and it was this image of Khaled Said that was passed around and widely disseminated. And it got into people's bones, and we tried to capture that in the music.
And I think also it's worth noting too that another thing that you might hear in this song is just the idea of the media, the state-run media, and the idea of feeding one lies, and how that is in this song. These characters who sings this. I mean, it's us in this interpretation, but how that's no longer going to be stood for. So. Those are sort of the two elements of the song that we really try to home in on.
For me, from my end, the biggest inspiration, were the words for the song itself, and just wanting to honor those words as much as possible through kind of just basically echoing them in as simple kind of imagery as possible, using very simple line art, limiting the color palette, extremely limiting the color palette. It was very important also for me to, one of the aspects of some of the revolutionary art that did come out in Cairo on the walls and whatnot was to use the color of the Egyptian flag, which is something I am guilty of, was guilty of early on for some of that artwork. And it was important for me to actually steer away from that, because I wanted to, instead of using the colors of a symbol that is largely imposed by the state and has been imposed essentially by kind of the state since the military apparatus took hold of the country 60 years ago, but instead to find a color that is comes from the culture itself. And that color, actually, that weird, neither green nor blue, that weird teal, is sort of like a color that I started to think about just the one color that when I remember Egypt, and anywhere in Egypt, not one particular place, it's that color, because, you find people use that color to paint a part of their houses as far out in Bahariya, oasis in the desert. You see it in Cairo. People use it typically for their balconies, especially in kind of poor neighborhoods or kind of, poor middle class possibly. So it comes from the culture. It comes from the folklore, and you find it in Aswan in the south. It's, if you really try and find are looking for one color that could possibly be representative, I would say that's the color,
That's really great, because it's funny, when I watched the video, that color stood out to me, and it was like, what a weird choice, but that's an Egyptian color. I haven't seen that color outside of Egypt. It's just great. Should we watch it? Let's watch it. Okay, so Sarah, take us there.
They feed me lies, if nothing scraps of truth. They fill me up with shit. I feel shame, they fill themselves, they fill me up again. This time on state TV, they said he ate hashish. That makes no sense, they say it anyways. They say it anyways. There are many ways to tell the truth. Just tell them that the youth are doing drugs. That's why he died, and drugs are wrong. That is not done, that is haram. They feed themselves, they like confections most. They let their bellies out. When they're full, they feed themselves. They drive in chauffeured cars, they shut down rotaries. And if you know the man in charge, you pass by, you pass by, you pass by, you pass by. You have rights, you pass by. You're my friend, you pass by. I can see them. I can see deep within. I can hear them when they say there's no wind of change, but I can flap my wings. They close their doors are beautiful. Their rooms are filled with men who tell them yes and ask them questions on the cost of roads and just how much is left for the function. Celebrating 30 years of this, they rent a tent to celebrate, and then they celebrate as they meditate on all the ways to tell the truth while drinking cups of tea. No whiskey for them, well maybe some, though it's hard on. We close our doors, we do have doors to close. We do have much to say, we keep close, and in the dark we see the natural thing, that there's a choice between the shit they feed us and the food for my life, for my soul, for my time, for my land, for the love of my home, for the love of my home, for the love of my home, for the love of my home. I can see them, I can see deep within. I can hear them when they say there's no wind. No wind of change, but I can flap my wings.
Bravo, guys. That is an awesome, perfect merger of word and image. It's just incredible. We could spend a lot of time just talking about the incredible thing that we just saw, but we are coming to the end of our time and want to make sure that our really great audience has an opportunity to engage with you all. So I want to do two things. So first of all, again, you can contribute your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. I also want to remind everybody that you can stream this album, Flap My Wings, on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, or everywhere you stream music, and the link will be put into the chat. And after we wrap up with our Q&A, you can stay on with the Lazur Brothers to listen to the entire album and continue the dialogue with them. So with that, let me now take us to the questions. We've got a few questions here, and please contribute more. So the first question is from Christine Noah, and she asks, how did you think, I guess this is for the Lazur Brothers, how do you think producing this album during this particular political moment in the United States and amidst a global pandemic impacted the process or the final product?
Yeah, that's a multi-pronged, great question. Well, maybe I can start with the positive. I don't think this project would have been possible without the pandemic. And the reason why I say that is because I really don't think that these incredible artists who contributed to this album would, this is rather terrestrial, but would be available to be a part of this and to actually contribute their voices and interpretations. So in a way, one of the positive elements of this is that this pandemic really allowed for this dream of creating this collaborative album to come true.
Mm-hmm. I'd also only add that, we really did focus it to make it a collection of protest songs. So we did leave out a couple songs that were a little bit more booky, like plot driven, because we did want them to stand on their own and resonate with people given the political moment we're in. And I think, I can speak for myself when I say that this summer was the first time when I truly felt like I was going out to the street, going out to a major protest, and to sort of to write from that point of view, to say, okay, so there are a number of people now who have this experience. How can we create an art object that resonates, that might be useful? So yeah, it's a protest collection.
That's great. So another question that we have here is for Ganzeer, and this is from Noreen Major. She's wondering if you could talk about the artwork and inspiration for the piece and your work more broadly, Ganzeer, in keeping the memory and narrative of revolution alive.
So the first part of the question was about process, was it?
Yeah.
So, the process was essentially kind of listening to the song and figuring out like a rough timing for like when different images would kind of appear at a relatively kind of reasonable pace. And then, and otherwise it was pretty simple. I knew that I had drawings that would appear in black and drawings that would appear in white. The ones that appear in white are predominantly done like brush and ink to get this brush strokey feel. And that kind of is contrasted with a nice kind of more like a fine line for the black drawings. And it was basically just kind of doing that, putting it all together, and scanning it all in, and sending it off to Paul McLaughlin, who did the animation. Prior to that, I had done like a really rough, super rough sketches, like bad, but like just like present the idea and put them kind of in a PDF that I played, that I played with the song in the background for the Lazur Brothers and Taibi over Zoom, basically, to give them an idea of like the pace and the images and stuff. And they had the vision enough vision to be able to sign off on that, because it's hard to like see or get what's going on if it's just rough sketches, but they're artists as well. And so that's the process, pretty simple. The other part of the question is about artwork that helps keep the narrative of the revolution alive. Well, for me, the narrative is not yet finished, right? So it's really about expressing my views on things, on the state of things through art, visually, and fully knowing that I can't go out and like do it on the street, in the field, so to speak, and being removed. So just using kind of the venues that I happen to have at my disposal now being removed from Egypt, and just continuing to speak truth to power, which is what it's all about, essentially.
Awesome. So another question that we have here is from Andy. We'll take a couple more, and then I think we'll try to end on time. But during this presentation, Andy asked, there were a lot of mentions of hope. And how has this collaboration both expanded your hope in the future and revealed that there is more for all of us to learn?
Wow. Well, I will say the hope part of the question I can answer in saying that I think if you listen through the album, which we're going to do in a few minutes, I think you can only feel how much this is like a community project. This is like a project about artists coming together and both remembering and also protesting, really, and making art. And as Taibi said, and as Hamid said, like just the art of it all is really what we're trying to put first and foremost. And it's not the most articulate answer, but I really think that like just the relentless necessity of art and making sure that as artists, we always find that to be the sort of number one, the crux of everything. I think that's necessary. That's sort of what this album is trying to do.
I'll also say energy breeds energy. So there's something about this collaboration. The best part about collaboration is 1 + 1 = 3, right? It's not the thing that I would have done or you would have done, but the thing we come up with together that creates new forms and new energies and keeps the conversation going. And I think that's hope is the skill of continuing, right? So it was powerful for me that way.
Yeah.
That's great. One other question that comes up, Eric Butler asks, was there anything discovered through the collaborations on this album that would influence the sound and arrangement of the score and the storytelling in future iterations of We Live in Cairo?
Eric Butler always has the hard hits, and sure, yeah. I think this project has totally changed how we would mount it again. Or added to, I shouldn't say totally changed, but added to this journey. And I think something that we're coming to with We Live in Cairo, that it's so much more about the dialogue that we have with artists than it is about the book musical We Live in Cairo itself. So who knows? I mean, already We Live in Cairo, and Ganzeer participated in an amazing event at Oberon and Joe's pub called Tahrir now, where it was songs from the show, but also testimonials from revolutionaries and from Ganzeer himself. And that was an iteration of We Live in Cairo. So who's to say, I think, how the show will exist in the future, but definitely, I don't think we could part with some of the amazing contributions that have been made by these artists. And I would also say, I mean, everything is a what they call a workshop. It's like we learned so much from this, which you'll actually hear that in the listen through if you stay. But the amazing cast at the A.R.T, some of whom are actually here in this chat, and just the willingness to dive 110% into this project. So we learned so much from that. And then we learned so much from this experience of music making, like making this music and giving the freedom to artists to interpret musical artists and visual artists to interpret this project, people that we trust. So I think it actually comes down to trust.
Taibi, did you want to add anything about how the show might change as a result of this process you guys just underwent?
I mean, I think our conversations are deeper and richer every time we talk about it. I will say, though, something incredible about the album is you get the level of detail inside the orchestrations and the way the band plays inside of this. All of our band from the production also plays on this album, and you get to capture it in ways we can't really do in the theater because of the limitations of sound and sound system design. So encouraging you to all take a listen and listen to our incredible band. Yeah.
So we've got enormously great questions in the Q&A, and unfortunately we're kind of at time and we're not going to be able to get to them. One question that appears repeatedly in the Q&A, which you probably should answer, is how will people see We Live in Cairo in the future? Any plans there?
Oh, geez, Tabes.
We're continuing to have conversations about how it can move forward. I think the pandemic, has obviously halted our industry almost completely. So, this was an effort to keep our conversation around the show going and to continue the narrative around the show. So we are in great hopes. And if you're a millionaire and want to give us some money, we'll take it.
No better investment.
I will also say, I think I just want to shed some light on a question from Carol Gray, which I think is actually very, very smart and important. Will there be factual information included with the release about the number of political prisoners in Egypt, maybe profiling some of the most notable prisoners like Ala Ahmed Saif, Abdel Fattah, and specific ways that people can take action to urge the release of prisoners? This is super important to us. I think this is a really great question. And I remember Carol asking this question. And this is something that, we do want to promote, and we will promote through this album in as many different ways as we can, because that is at the end of the day, the most essential thing that this project is trying to raise awareness for. So
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Carol. Thank you for addressing it, Daniel. And once again, you just demonstrate how much you guys really care about this place that you've been writing and telling stories about. So remember, everybody, thank you, first of all, for joining us. Remember, you can stream this album everywhere music is streamed: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon. And, if you are like me and you want to continue listening, you can stay on. But right now, I think all that is left for us to do is to thank Daniel, Patrick, and Taibi for putting together this incredible album. Emel and Hamid have left us, but we thank them, and thank Ganzeer for all of the many ways in which he has inspired this work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Tarek, and everybody.
Taibi,
Ganzeer, Taibi.
All right.